Come on, clip to my pants already.
Need help?
No, I got it. There we go. Okay. Here, 4:45.
Today?
Yeah, because either we were going to have to do it here or do it there, but we'll just do it at Denise and Chris's. I don't know. He's probably just going to sit and use the drawing pad to do it. So.
Yeah, I need to figure out if I bought a drawing pad, and then I went to use it with my laptop, and it said put the CD, and I was like, it's not going to happen.
There should be a drive. I don't even.
So I haven't looked yet.
With mine, we just plugged into my computer and it started working. I didn't have to download anything. Huh. Weird. So I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to do this so that I can address the behind the curtain and the not behind the curtain. Yeah, right. It'd be perfect. Wearing my teacher hat. Okay, so welcome to Financial Power U, everyone. Yeah, I think he turned it on. I see a green light. One of the things that is important from a speaking perspective when you're teaching is to pre-frame what you want the audience to experience. And you can do this when you're having a one-on-one meeting. You can do this when you're speaking from stage. And it's about, number one, pre-framing the emotions and the experience you want someone to have by telling them this is the emotion and the experience you are going to have, and setting them up for how they're going to make decisions to purchase. So when you're speaking from stage, if you can talk about this is the attitude that a lot of the people that attend these types of events have, or these are the things that my audience usually asks. Using pre-framing statements like that plants that idea in their head so that they know that that's the response that they're supposed to have. Does that make sense? So it sets it up for success. So when I created the Financial Power U slideshow, I went through the things that I expected the audience to have. So what I would do in a presentation is usually get up and first introduce myself, talk about who I am, and be authentic. So I'm going to talk about some of the awesome things that have happened in my life, some of the struggles that I've been through, how I was able to come through that, and what it's done for me and how it's really set me up for future success. So you always want to have that piece in a presentation so that the audience can relate to you. And then you can move into understanding and really pre-framing what the experience you want them to have. And that's going to be determined, the length of that segment is determined by the length of how much time you're going to be speaking. So if it's a 1-hour presentation, you might drop a few things throughout the talk. With Financial Power U, when it's a 2-day event, I go through, I think it's 7 or 8 slides of the things that I expect from the audience so that they can show up that way. So the first thing is really pre-framing their mindset of them showing up, being a part of what it is that we're going to accomplish over the next 2 days, being present, committing to their growth. What this does is it lets them know, don't be on your cell phone, don't be on your computer, don't be on the web. But if you don't tell people that, they will be. So you want to create some of those expectations. So this information is so interesting, most people are taking notes and most people are going to have quite a few questions when we're done. By saying that, what are you telling them to do? Take notes, but you don't have to tell them. So that's the purpose of pre-framing, is to have that perspective. Talking about being on time, coming back from breaks on time, coming back from lunch on time, things like that. Play full out, give 100%, ask questions. These are the pieces that if you want them to ask questions, tell them. You're probably going to have some questions come up. Take notes, write these down so that when the time comes for questions, we can have that conversation. And what that does is it keeps those people who have a tendency to want to ask the questions in the middle of what you're presenting. It lets them know that there's going to be an appropriate time. So I'm just kind of talking about some of the, as a side note, some of the reasons why when I present this from stage, why I even do this. I talk about getting rid of fear, self-doubt, and negative self-talk. Now this is because at some point I'm going to sell them something, right? Whether that's what we do with the Five Rings Financial or whether I'm selling my business intensive, at some point, their negative self-talk is going to come up. I can't afford that. I can't do this. I can't do that. So I'm beginning to pre-frame that excuse right out of the conversation. Does that make sense? And then I'm going to seed throughout the presentation that successful people make a lot of decisions and they make a lot of decisions quickly. So that when the opportunity for them to make a decision comes up, that comes into their brain. Make sense? Know that you're not going to be, honor yourself and know that you'll never be the same. To commit to come to a 2-day event or even to listen to a 1-hour presentation, for a lot of people is they're committing their time. So you want to let them know that they're making a sacrifice and that they're making a decision, and that if they choose, this could be a life-changing experience for them. And those are all things that you can pre-frame. And then be ready to take the next step. Which means when there's an opportunity to take the next step, they can make a decision about that. So since this was in the PowerPoint, I figured I'd just talk about it from the perspective of why I put it in the PowerPoint to begin with. For me, when I speak, I like to have an outline and a structure so that people know what they're going to get. So I like the anchor. You all know that's part of my branding. And so what I did is I took the word anchor and I turned it into an acronym that would give me a structure that I could speak through. It's not necessarily something that you have to do. You can just have a 6-step process. And that 6-step process could be what we're going to go through. So you don't necessarily have to spend hours and hours trying to make up some acronym necessarily. But if this is something that you really do want to be speaking, what helps is to have a structure so that people know what to expect, what's coming next, what's the overall outline of the experience going to be. So for me, the anchor system I created was all based off of sailing terms. And I'm talking about number 1, mindset. So one aft glance is an entire section that we're going to talk about mindset. For those of you that run Wine, Women, and Wealth, it's really it's a Wine, Women, and Wealth conversation. There's so many different ways you can talk about it. You can talk about the money soundtrack, your money story, whatever different term you like, you can use. But one of those key pieces. So when you're creating a talk, that's one segment that you could just choose to give that talk and just focus on the mindset and that's it. Or you can combine it with a couple of other things. Or you could do a presentation that's going to go through your 6 steps, but it's going to be an outline that then moves people from that outline into wanting more information. Does that make sense? So when I'm out speaking, what I want people to know is that there's a next step, whether that's sitting down and having a personal conversation with me, or it's coming to a Money 101, or it's coming to a 2-day workshop. And when you're having a one-on-one appointment, by presenting one napkin presentation, it's a very similar process. So you show one napkin presentation and you say, there's more where that came from, right? And what is the Money 101? It's just a series of napkin presentations back to back. So you don't give 100% of it all up front because the point is to develop that relationship. So when I look at this outline, what I can do is if I'm speaking to a group of young people that want financial literacy, I might focus more on how the heck do you budget. So when I would go in, I would say, what I've done is created a 6-step process for financial success. It's these 6 steps, boom, 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 boom. Today, I'm going to be highlighting this one. And what that does is it gives them curiosity around the other 5, gives them information on one, and then they want to continue those conversations. And that gives you the open door to figure out what the next step is going to be. And at the end of the presentation, you recap. Like I said, I have 6 steps to success. Today, we only had enough time to cover 1. If you're really interested in finding out more, your next step is show up at Money 101, come to Wine, Women, and Wealth, book a one-on-one coffee date, meet my mentor, show up at a 2-day workshop. Because these workshops are things that you guys could be running here as a group, and instead of just having the Money 101, maybe there are people who want some more hands-on financial time and they want to learn how to budget. So what you're able to do is say, hey, we've got a great room. let's set aside a day and we're going to teach budgeting as a group. So all of you would invite. You could choose to charge for it or choose not to charge for it. People come and they're going to get Money 101, but they're going to get something more. And then from that, what you're doing is building that relationship, showing your expertise, and giving yourself the ability to keep helping people move to the next step, which eventually is create a budget, run your money through the funnel, and start a savings program with 5 Rings Financial, enroll your 401k. But a lot of times people aren't ready for that yet. They need that know, like, and trust. So if you've got these pieces that you like to teach, maybe you do all 6 and each one of you teaches 1. So it sets all of you up, you fill the room, and it's just another way that you can be presenting this information and practicing your speaking skills and having fun and making a deeper connection. It could be used as a client appreciation tool. So a lot of your clients that you're working with, maybe you sat down with them and you talked to them about making a budget, but it's been 3 months and they still haven't done it. You could say, hey, we're hosting a free budget making workshop on 2 Saturdays from now. Come, and we'll actually work with you hands-on to do this work. You give them the spreadsheet and you walk them through actually doing it, and they leave with something done. And what did you do? You added one more level of relationship with them to where they say, man, that Nicole, that Trudy, that Diane, that Rima, that Helen, they were awesome. They were awesome. And so I want to tell my friends about this cool budgeting workshop. I'm going to post pictures of me and Nicole, my awesome financial advisor, on Facebook that I was at the workshop. Those are the things that'll start to happen. We had a lady that we sat down with Charisse and Yesenia. She loved us so much, she's like, let's take a selfie. So she posts this picture of, like, I just had the best time with these 3 women talking about money. And she, like, pastes it all over her Facebook. And can I bring friends to the next Wine Women and Wealth? All we're doing is building relationship. So these tools are going to be a way where you can extract your personality from it and then be able to say, okay, based on this group, I'm going to talk about mindset, but I'm going to let them know there's 5 other steps. So we're going to go through each one of those steps with enough information that then you could take and create your own stuff. Whether that's speaking in Toastmasters, you get invited to speak, or you set something up for your own thing. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, so then I created this framework that just kind of, again, it's showing people that there's a system. It doesn't have to be this, you know me in flowcharts. I mean, do I really need to say any more? It doesn't have to be this nuts, but I wanted people to be able to see how it all fits together. Yeah. So however you want to present it, whether it's a list, step 1 through 6, it's a flowchart, there's, steal R&D what I have, rip off and duplicate, or create something that you like. Okay, so the first piece is understanding, mastering the mindset. And that's something that all of us women are really good at that conversation because we're running the Wine Women and Wealth as it is, and that's the whole point of Wine Women and Wealth, is to get into the conversation about mastering your mindset. And I created a little equation that walks people through that. And so for me, since I focus on what I call the money soundtrack, which I'm going to be trademarking so that it'll just be only available to people who, are with 5 Rings and the people that I give permission to use it, which will be cool. So I say that your money soundtrack to the power of your money anthem plus your money personality equals your financial power. So you take that existing money soundtrack, and once you understand it, you can upgrade it. So you take your money soundtrack up to the power of your money anthem. Then you bring in that conversation of the money personality, which we have learned and is a pretty simple conversation from the money couple. And that's what gives people that real foundation of a financial understanding. And Nicole has these slides now so she can share them with everybody. Yeah, and Nicole's got her own acronym. So she uses Roadmap because her focus is a little bit more on the map to success. And so you can take the time to do that or just use a simple 1 through 6. The idea isn't to have you spending tons of time developing content, but to give you tools that will get you in front of a group and you feel prepared You don't have to invent everything. It's already there, and you can be able to have this sort of conversation. So I've given this talk. I've now been paid to give this talk. So I know that it's a good talk. I got paid $500 to go speak at the Orange County Women Business Owners Convention. And I was speaking in the room, and there was Rita Bocuzzi sitting in the room working for a different financial company, listening to me having this conversation, saying, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And now I get to hire her, and next week we're launching her Wine, Women, and Wealth. So it's just as much about finding clients as it is about finding recruits and hiring people. So the idea around your money soundtrack is this concept that whether you call it a money story, a money soundtrack, the concept is that we have default beliefs as human beings about everything. We have default beliefs about our bodies. If we were raised by a mom who was constantly talking about her weight, are we more likely to be a little bit more nuts about our weight? Right? So it's with anything that happens in life, we have these default beliefs. It's just what we were told. So when we were young, all of us were told something about money. Or we saw something. Maybe it wasn't talked about, but we observed something as a young person. And what that did is it created the idea of the soundtrack, or the song that starts to play in your head. And you know those songs that kind of get stuck? There's a ride at Disneyland with a song that I'm not going to sing, but now that I've even said that, it's stuck in your head. That's the way the money soundtrack works. It plays, and we don't even realize that this tape is running. It's just constantly playing. So the very first step in understanding what your current money story is, or your current money soundtrack is what in the world is it? The thing is that when we're playing the song, sometimes it's been there so long we don't even realize that it's there. And it's just playing in the background. And until we turn up the volume and we say, okay, I hear this song now, we cannot make a decision to change the channel. We're operating from that place, whether we know it, whether we like it or not. That's where we're operating from. It's a default belief that we were given, and until we make a decision to change that and we choose new beliefs, we're just going to run from whatever we've got. Default programming. It's like whether or not you choose to upgrade your computer. Do you want the old stuff? Do you want the new stuff? But until you realize that you have the ability to make that upgrade, you're going to run off the old system, right? So I believe that our story, or our soundtrack, is made up of 3 different pieces. The first is our childhood. These are the experiences that we had when we were growing up about money. So childhood are like, when I'm speaking to an audience, I'll ask them, raise your hand if you remember having a specifically positive conversation about money. And only about 10% of the people in the room will raise their hand. Then I say, what about a specifically negative conversation about money? At least half. At least. 50 to 60%. So we've got 10% positive, 60% negative, and about 30% that are like, huh? I don't know what you're talking about. My parents never talked about money. And when your parents didn't talk about money, what were they teaching you? You're not supposed to talk about money. So what do now? They don't talk about money at all. And then you can begin to ask people, stop for a minute, close your eyes, depending on the energy in the room. If it's more of a woo-woo group, you can get them to close their eyes and just say, okay, think about the first money experience that comes to your mind. And you'll get some really powerful stories. The other night at the Pennsylvania Wine, Women, and Wealth, we had a gal, after setting the stage and making the room comfortable and letting people know it was about community and it was a space for a conversation, a gal raised her hand and said, I've never said this to a group before, and I just realized this, but when I was young, my grandpa used to always hand out money, but he always wanted sexual favors in return. She said it in a group of women she did not know. So it's a very powerful and potentially healing conversation for women to be able to have that space, or just an audience. I mean, I find it's more receptive in a group of women than co-ed, but you can do this conversation with men as well. But it's about getting them to pick out, what is it about money that I was taught without even realizing I was being taught? And those are those childhood experiences. And you'll have groups that'll share, and it creates a really quick bond very quickly, a really great bond very quickly. The second piece is society, what I call the societal isms. And those are the sayings that whether they were raised with them or heard them on TV, it's just the stuff that comes to mind. These are things like, money is the root of all evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. Filthy rich. I mean, we could talk all day long about those different sayings, but it's important to realize that that's kind of what has begun to run that conversation, those default programming pieces. And then lastly, there's the adult experiences. So usually, if you're programmed one way, eventually you're going to have an experience as an adult that confirms what you were programmed with. Like money doesn't grow on trees, and then my entire adult life, there hasn't really been much money. So you begin to reaffirm those beliefs. Did you have a realization?
Yes, I always do when you're talking about that.
Do share.
Money doesn't grow on trees. Wish in one hand and the other one and see which one gets full fastest. That's what we can't afford that.
Yep. They just and it just starts. It just runs.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how it sounds.
Yeah.
Exactly the way it sounded. We can't afford that.
And so we begin to, as soon as we allow ourselves to have these realizations, it pops up, because what that's doing is when it pops up, we can say, that's not serving me anymore. I can't even believe I've been running off of this program this whole time. Yeah. Out you go. And then you can let it go. And if they're the really powerful ones, when you're creating your money anthem, you can choose things that directly counteract that thing. So in my money anthem, I was lucky enough to have a dad that talked to me about money from a very young age. I knew that what we spent, I knew what we made, I knew what he had in his 401k, I saw the budget sheet, I knew everything about everything in our financial household from about 5. However, I knew my dad made money, and I also saw how much he worked. 4 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, every single day except for Sunday, he'd take 4 hours off, buy us donuts, and take us to church. Come home, go back to work. So what was I being taught in that experience? You have to work really, 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 really hard. You have to stress yourself out. You have to get sick. You have to not have good relationships with the people in your life. And that way you deserve the money that's showing up. So for a long time, what did I do? I created more work for myself because I felt like the money that was showing up I wasn't doing enough work for. So I created another business where I could spend all of the money that I was making and work twice as hard and still have nothing.
That worked for you.
It didn't. And until I realized, holy smokes, that is directly related to the example that I saw. Because would my dad ever teach me that on purpose? No, but that's what he was doing. And so I was watching what he was doing, and that's what programmed me. And now, what I had to do was, because that was such a powerful piece of what I grew up with, I had to directly put something into my money anthem to counteract that, which is the beginning of my money anthem. Money flows freely, easily, and effortlessly, and without 80 hours a week of work. That's the piece that I used. So when you're working with somebody, you could do a whole workshop in just creating this money anthem or money mantra or whatever you want to call it that would allow them to really analyze what did you grow up with, and then what do you want to switch it to. And when you have, let's say that they have 5 key points of stuff that they remember, a conversation they remember, something that they allow themselves to say in their head all the time. When you find those pieces, then you can say, what can I say that will rewrite that into something positive? And do that with all 5 of those pieces, and then use that to create the money anthem. And by doing that, they leave with something tangible. And we were having the Wine, Women, and Wealth in Pennsylvania, and twice while we were there, Yesenia's phone alarm that was plugged in over on the other side of the room went off. And at the end, I was like, what in the world were you, what was that? She's like, oh, I have an alarm in my phone that 3 times a day goes off to remind me to say my money mantra. So it was her money mantra alarm. So you can tell them, like, hey, practically, this is how you can get yourself taking these steps. The other way that you can talk about the money anthem is have them include things like their best money experiences, like the feelings that they had around that, to reflect on those. Maybe that's the first paycheck that you got. the first time, maybe you paid off your car and you didn't have a car payment anymore. Whatever those positive money experiences, you reach in your pocket and you find the $20 bill. Those are those best money experiences. And you want to capture the emotions that were involved there. Then you want to look at what are your goals financially? What experience do you really want to have around money? And it's more about the emotion tied to the action. So in my money mantra, money flows freely, easily, and effortlessly. With it, I honor myself. With that, I'm affirming self-care, taking time off, enjoying life, buying myself stuff every once in a while. I honor myself. I honor my family, spending quality time with family. I honor my business, my community, and my causes. So those are the 5 things that are important to me, that when all of the money that I could ever possibly need to spend in my life shows up, those are the places that I want to be focused. And that's why I chose to put that into the mantra. And then lastly, any new money beliefs. And this is really where you can pull those old beliefs and translate them into the new beliefs by what's the opposite of what they've been believing, and then use all of those pieces to create the money anthem. And you can talk about the fact that with our money anthem, when we begin to say that, it's reprogramming those default beliefs. So what you're doing is you're turning up the volume on the existing soundtrack and you're saying, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for these stinky beliefs, but I know that I have stinky beliefs. And I know that those stinky beliefs are what keep causing these results. Because there's that spiral that is talked about in a couple of the different books. And really, it's just kind of in general. I know Tony Robbins talks about it. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but we start with our beliefs. And some of us chose these and some of us didn't. If we've done work on ourselves, then we're already in the place of creating our own beliefs. But if not, we just start with whatever we have. And then those beliefs drive our emotions. So whatever belief, then we have an emotion around it, which then drives us to take a specific action. We act long enough in the same direction, and we create habits. And those habits drive our results. So if we start with a stinky money belief, what do we have? A negative emotion around that doesn't feel good. And if we don't feel good, we create an action. Maybe it's money doesn't grow on trees. Ugh, that makes me feel gross. I hate feeling gross. I need to go buy something. I buy something enough, I get myself into debt. Which then confirms I don't have enough money, which means that money doesn't grow on trees. Ugh, that feels yucky. I'm going to go buy something. And we just keep going in the spiral until we're in such stinky results that we're wondering, what the heck? Isn't there supposed to be abundance in the world? Why isn't there abundance? Why do I feel like this all the time? And it's because we don't even realize that that original belief is what's running everything. So we have to stop and say, what is it that I believe? What have I been believing that has brought me to this place? And then once you know what you've been believing, you can say, that is not serving me anymore. I need to believe something different. What do I choose to believe? And what can I do to replace those default beliefs with a new choice? And then when you make that new choice, you'll have a new emotion about it. That new emotion, so your new choice might be, money is abundant. Let's just use something simple. The emotion, you'd feel better, which means you don't necessarily go out and buy. You could be out shopping and you could say, money is abundant, and really I'd rather choose to spend my money somewhere else. I'd rather choose to save my money because I have big goals. And so you'd have a different habit, which would drive a different result. And so instead of spiraling downward from that, you're able to spiral upward. And you eventually move yourself up towards the results that you really want to have. So that's really the process behind why this first step is so important. Because if you're sitting down and you're talking to somebody about, hey, save money, compound interest, everything is great, you're going to grow this big pile of money, but they're sitting there thinking, Yeah, but money is the root of all evil. Why would I want to grow it? But they're not saying that consciously. They're saying that subconsciously, and they keep wondering why they can never get ahead financially. And once they can identify the fact that they're running from that program of, wait a minute, this isn't going to work. It's a completely different perspective that they can bring to the table. And they can say, okay, I see how I've been telling myself that, but the truth is that money is not the root of all evil. Money is, whatever their new belief is, that will eventually drive those better results. So this is a really great initial conversation to use as a speaking tool to get people thinking about what is it that I even believe about money? What am I doing about it? How can I change that? And it for the very first time for a lot of people puts them in a place of power around their money, which they haven't been, especially if they've been afraid to talk about it. If they grew up in a household where you're not allowed to talk about money at all, having this initial conversation automatically puts them in a more powerful place where they feel like maybe their belief is that people who ask questions about money are dumb, or people who don't know how to do math don't know how to do money. Whatever it is that they've been told, that could keep them from really advancing in their financial lives because they feel stuck. Any questions around the money mindset conversation and how to use it to present? Cool. Okay. It's lunchtime. That would have been perfect if Andre walked in with the food. Yeah.
More of a statement.
Okay.
Because I'm not in the financial position that I would like to be at, that is a negative feeling for me that keeps feeding at it, that I go, well, how am I going to teach someone else about finances? And if they ask me and I'm not doing well, how am I going to be a good resource for them?
Right.
How are they going to look? Yeah, how are they going to look at me? I'm judging myself.
Right. So one of the things, I'll recap that and I'll answer it. So one of the things that comes up for a lot of people when they're getting into the financial services industry is they've had success in the past at something, but they might not be in their ideal financial situation right now. And so what that causes is a judgment around how am I going to be able to have this conversation with people about money when my financial situation isn't that great. And I know from very personal experience, i.e. mine, and a lot of other people that I've worked with, that there's two pieces that you can bring in. The first is being the person that's in the training position and saying, I'm doing this because I know that I need to know more about money, and I know that there are a lot of people who need that information. So I'm in a training program so that I can learn how to teach this, and I have an amazing mentor who's able to teach it while I learn. So what that does is it says, yeah, I'm not in the best financial situation, and no, I don't really know everything about it. However, I have a great support system. That's number one. Number two is just having the realization that regardless of your current financial situation, what we do changes lives. And so understanding how the specific products that we market that protect people from losing money, understanding how valuable that is and what the percentage of the population that's looking for something like that, regardless of the financial situation that you're in based on past decisions, does not change the impact that those products would have on someone else. And so we can't judge ourselves for making mistakes when we're in a place now where we see that there's something that really will make a huge impact. Does that make sense? So it's a way to reframe it in our own minds to say, you know what? Yeah, I haven't made the greatest financial decisions. And although I hadn't made the greatest financial decisions, I'm making new decisions now. And choosing those new beliefs, those new decisions, a new career, whatever, takes time to build up those results. But you know that you're on track moving towards what it is that you really do want to create. So that is kind of how, when I work with people, especially that are in that position, helps them to reframe it. Does that help? Okay.
Can I just add something to that too? When I was presenting at a Wine Women in Wealth in Rancho Bernardo a couple of months ago, I actually told my story because where I came from was, I good. It was not good. And I told my story and where I am now, and that when I did go to the Money 101, it literally changed my whole course of my life, that 1 hour. And I said, and it took Nicole 8 months to get me to that Money 101. Don't wait that long. Do you know how many people came up to us and asked us when the next Money 101 was? Because I told that story?
Because you were being real.
Yeah.
Because I was being authentic.
Yep.
Because I came from here, I went to the Money 101 and I went, wow, there is hope for me.
Right.
Someone who lives paycheck to paycheck. And now I don't have to because of that Money 101. It was very powerful.
Mhm.
And it was powerful for myself as well because it took me to a higher level of empowerment.
Right.
It
And
was
you're
just amazing.
and you're acknowledging where you were, where you are, the decisions that you've made to change that, regardless of the fact that maybe you're not all the way to your ultimate goal, which is to have $1 million in the bank. You're on your way, and you've changed that trajectory. And so, by acknowledging, what I have found is when you can just acknowledge the fact that this is the way it was, this is what I'm doing about it, and this is where I'm going. People don't. They're not asking what's your bank balance. You know, they want to know, are you real, and can you help me? And so by being real and letting them know how you've helped yourself, then you're able to step into that place of, this is what I'm doing about it, and either eventually do it on your own or bring a mentor and have somebody really work with that person. It's going to make an impact.
I was going to say that bringing that mentor in is a big piece of it, huge piece, because then you're saying, I want to do what's best for you. I'm going to bring somebody who is experienced.
Right. Yeah. And that also builds up your confidence level. And then at some point you'll get to the point, and it happens with everybody that I've trained, that they get to that place where they're like, okay, I can do this on my own. And you're like, okay, little birdie, fly.
I started telling Nicole, I can do the first appointment,
Uh-huh.
but I want you there at the second.
Yep.
And now it's more like the third appointment, and eventually it'll be, but it's still,
You've done a lot on your own.
I have done a lot on
You
my
just
own.
call and ask questions behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, what about this?
What about that? Yeah. Yeah, so there's those are some of the pieces around this conversation that we as agents have to have with ourselves as well. And I'm going to jump back into the presentation side of it really quick. Let me go back one. One of my favorite examples is the idea of the I can't afford it conversation. And this is a great example to begin to have people become aware of what they're telling themselves. When you're talking and you say, okay, how many of you have ever said, I can't afford it about something? And everybody better raise their hand. At some point you've said it about something. And that is one of those conversations that we self-talk, that we allow to happen in our head, that we don't even realize we're saying it. So by having this conversation, what it's going to do is it's going to make you, the audience, think about how or when that conversation starts to come up. It gives you the awareness. So as soon as you start to say, I can't afford it about something, whether it's a pair of shoes or an investment that you want to make in your business, what you're able to do is you get to that place, you're about to say it, and you say, oh, look at me. I'm about to say I can't afford it. And you just acknowledge it first, and then you make a decision to say something else. So the question you ask yourself in place of saying I can't afford it is, look at that great pair of shoes. Do I really want that great pair of shoes? I don't get into the whole want need. It's just stop and just look at it, and do I really want it? Or do I really want that new website for my business, if we're talking about a business investment? You look at it and you say, no. I would rather, or I choose to spend my money somewhere else. What it does is it forces you to stay in a position of power. Instead of just going, can't afford it, then I don't have to think about it, and I can just go on to the next, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, I can't. You become a broken record. But it's giving your power away every single time you do that. So instead, you say, I choose to spend my money somewhere else. Or you say, you know what, yes, I really do want that thing. I really do. So you say, how can I get resourceful to make that happen? Because if it's a website, let's say that you have something that you could trade a service to get the website. When you say I can't afford it, it cuts off all creativity, all ability to get creative and think about a different way, you've just given up. But if it's something that you really want and you say, how can I get resourceful? You start thinking, who do I know? What do I know? How do I, maybe I need to save, maybe I need to, what can I do? And it opens the door to creativity instead of just shutting it down and that's the end of the story. Does that make sense?
I always say, I buy it. And I say, there's plenty more money where that came from.
That's awesome.
I know.
Hang on, I got a little,
No, it's because that was my money anthem then. Isn't that crazy?
yeah, got cord going on everywhere. There we go. My microphone's all turned around. There. Okay, whew.